Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with the final installment of JLA Avengers. After crisscrossing between universes, fighting over powerful talismans, and having their histories altered, the two teams are led to the dying Grand Master. He uses the last of his power to show them the path to properly restore their realities, through triumphs and tragedies alike. Despite the temptation to change things their way, they decide to unite against Krona's mad quest. And best of all, I can finally watch Linkar's review of this series from a few months back. I hope we didn't come up with the same jokes. What if he suddenly decided to start wearing a headband and sunglasses? The cover has a starry background, the two Earths coming together, and standing defiantly on a mound of rocks is a battle-worn Superman, wielding Captain America's shield and Thor's hammer. It's the image you never knew you wanted to see, and it looks awesome. But a lot of that is helped by the context of the previous issues. We open to a series of monitors with the data Krona has gathered about the birth of the Marvel Universe. Specifically, that the last survivor of planet Ta merged with the sentience of the previous universe as it was ending, and when the new verse came about, that last survivor became Galactus. Krona notes how the universe was a voice, whereas in the DCU, it was created by a hand, meaning a living, thinking spirit is what creates cosmoses. And Metron asks, now what? Since Krona wields the power items not, I think that's a typo and it's supposed to be now. I mean, he's got them in the big containment orbs, so... Well, the ancient Owen plans to coax out the sentient entities and force them to reveal their secrets. And if the two universes die in the process, so what? All that matters is that Krona will have his answers. This is why you're not allowed to compete on Jeopardy! Across both realities as they merge, buildings crumble, devastation abounds, and heroes are doing their best to save lives, each not knowing where their mightiest super teams are, but confident they're doing their part in fighting the problem. And they will, as soon as Vision cools off after tossing aside several allies while on the JLA watchtower. He's determined to rescue the two children he didn't realize he'd ever have, but it takes Martian Manhunter's psionic influence to slow him down, which makes a little bit more sense than the ultimate nullifier thing in issue 1, but I digress. And his at-the-moment wife, Wanda, reasons that restoring things to how they were before this all started is the best course of action. Now that Viz has accepted their mission fully, they gather to strategize, Hal outlining Krona's ability to enthrall people to his whim, on top of additional defenses, and how they'll need a ship capable of taking them to his base. But when all is said and done, they'll need a capable leader to follow, and Superman nominates Captain America. Anyone who's punched Adolf Hitler more than 200 times is more than qualified for the job. Though their realities have certain conflicting natures, he's the ideal candidate, and with Jean confirming the League will follow his orders, Steve accepts, and they get to work on a capable vessel. Without masks, even bats. I guess it'd be the ultimate sign of trust, or a what do secret identities matter to people from another reality, or something. Anyway, an Atlantean ship is refitted, modulated, and linked to Vision's brain, enhanced by Green Lantern's power ring, with peak thrust and maneuverability. I'm just sorry we had to divert most of the cannon power to do it. I'm not. I don't much like guns. And I'm just sorry we don't have time to make it look bat-shaped. You know it's an Atlantean ship, right? And it could have been a Batlantean ship! The dimensional harmonics need to be right, which I think is code for we need some time for the heroes to have humble and or tense reflections on their mission. Wanda and Vision comfort each other. Pym continues to apologize to Jan for the disturbing concept of him ever hitting her, and Barry and Hal try to give each other solace in how capable their successors will be. That and the prospect of their inevitable devises after things revert to normal. Thor waxes to Aquaman about the mightiness that has been assembled, and figures he could take Supes in a fight now that he has a measure of them. And Big Blue meets with Cap, as requested, apologizing for his words, but hey, neither of them were themselves. After each shares their concerns about whether they do too much or too little for their respective worlds, Steve gets to why he called Superman over. The Kryptonian will be taking the brunt of the attacks, and Krona will be too powerful even for him, and since Cap will be commanding from the ship, he gives Clark his iconic shield, to give him an extra edge. Now, while I respect this gesture, and it makes sense that someone should use such a resourceful weapon if its owner isn't going to, Superman's invulnerable. Anything that Krona throws at him that could do him damage could potentially do the same for the shield, I would imagine. On the other hand, I guess being largely made of vibranium isn't exactly nothing, so I'm gonna roll with it. It's officially go time, with Mjolnir powering Flash's cosmic treadmill, which Tony says wouldn't work on their world, and Wanda providing probability disruption. The ship is instantaneously brought to Krona's fortress, comprised of Galactus. Krona may be insane, willing to destroy entire universes full of innocent lives on the chance to gain more knowledge, but at least he's sensible enough to recycle. When alerted to their presence, Krona reserves most of his power for later, using some to enthrall a few of the weaker-minded denizens of their demimondes. There are a few definitions for that word. The only two that work in this context are basically saying that groups like the Cult of Cobra and A.I.M are morally questionable and terrible at what they do. So I guess he knows he's sending idiots into the fray. The ship lands, and before some shock troops from Apocalypse can make good on their boastfulness, both teams charge into battle with the classic battle cry. Avengers, assemble! And Justice League, lambast! If only she wasn't so committed to the alliteration. She could have said something like, I don't know, Justice League action! And Cartoon Network would have only had her say it at 4:45 a.m. on Saturday mornings when no one's watching. Jean mind-links Cap with everyone on the ground, coordinating their efforts where they'll be the most effective. Even when more threats arrive, he's calm and succinct with what needs to get done. Meanwhile, Superman seems really impressed with his borrowed shield, which I think is more of a respectful nod to Cap and the Marvelverse, as opposed to Supes actually needing the shield. Again, invulnerable. But moving on, Flash and Wasp discover a hastily built field wall, with gaps a single man could get through. A single Batman, to be precise, who's already heading through before Cap can give the order. That's our Batman! A sudden wave of chronal instability hits, changing some heroes, like Pym going from Goliath to Yellowjacket, and switches out others, like Aquaman and Wanda vanishing, with Hawkeye, Quicksilver, and Green Arrow in their stead. They're telepathically updated and Cap gets them to work, as the Royal Flush Gang appear to interrupt another back and forth between the Archers. Krona has apparently seized the avatars for the universes, and hasn't much time to get information from them before they're gone. He asks Metron for his aid, seeing as he's a fellow truth-seeker, but he's like, nah. Even though he led Krona to the Avengers reality, the guy in the chair says Krona should honestly ask himself what he wants. Answers or conquest? In either case, Metron will be watching from elsewhere. You would not believe the shows I still haven't deleted off my DVR, and I'm gonna need to make a lot of space for this. Batman's disabled the field generator and lets Cap know to send the others through while he scouts ahead. But the chronal wave changing his costume distracts him long enough that he takes a kick from Batroc the Leaper. The voice in my head, tells me you are a most skillful fighter. And Batroc, he loves to meet the skillful fighters. Let us see which of us is the most skillful, eh? Oh, I don't have a joke for this. I just really wanted to do a cheesy French accent for this guy. As new heroes are warped in, like Black Knight, Beast, Man's Plastic and Elongated, etc., Krona has stepped up his villain game by bringing in the likes of Screaming Mimi, Felix Faust, Baron Zemo, and more. Honestly, naming the heroes alone that appear in this fight would be a video unto itself. They've made it through 2 waves of defenses, and will keep fighting until they make it all the way to Krona. When Dream Slayer sees Flash rescue Hawkeye, and the two being all inspiring and devil-may-care, he attacks, seeming to vaporize them, leaving behind only Flash's costume and Hawk's quiver. Pretty sure that's Dreamslayer. He looks like the guy from Convergence of the Titans I reviewed months back, but no indication otherwise of who he is or what his powers exactly are, and they were pretty ambiguous in that other comic. Anyway, Cap tells his troops to keep going, and there'll be time to mourn later. An enraged Hal briefly changes to his Parallax form, then is switched out by Kyle Rayner, who is still running on Cosmic Cube energy as he unleashes a barrage of construct missiles. Thor rallies everyone forward as Green Arrow, losing his own artillery earlier, opts to use Barton's, in memory of the man who was even more annoying than GA himself. That reminds me, I need to update my will so that it includes the mandate for mourners to shoot each other with arrows. The ones with the suction cups. Honest. Narration notes that as more enemies appear and their ranks swap or change, Cap compensates, his orders telepathically transmitted with precision. There's a fun moment with both publishers as Captain Marvels. See, they can get along. And for anyone wondering when Hulk would show up, here he is. But only until he's switched out. So, bummer for Hulk fans. Batman has just taken out Batroc. It's funny because they both begin with Bat. Anyway, he finds a small platoon of other challengers waiting, but is fortunately backed up by Black Panther, Huntress, and Black Widow. Meanwhile, Jean has vanished, and thus the mind link is gone. And that's when Captain America is faced with the villain Prometheus, having snuck onto the ship and downloaded Batman's fighting style into his brain. That'll be more than enough to defeat you. Oh, I'd never thought I'd do this thrice in one season, but... Krona finally gets what Metron was talking about. Since he's on the cusp of gaining knowledge he seeks, he finds it insufficient, so it turns out he's cuckoo for conquest. He wants payback on all the heroes, worlds, and universes that denied him so long. Because that's super rational. As the battle rages, now Electric Superman loses Cap's shield. I guess because Rogers himself was phased into a period where he had an energy-based replacement, which he uses while schooling Prometheus. Pre-programmed skills aren't much to a seasoned soldier, though if I'm being honest, it's not as elaborate a fight as I'd like to see between these two, given how much trouble Prometheus is shown to be for the DC heroes, and here he is getting taken down rather quickly because Cap's got a lot of focus. I do understand why. There's a lot going on, there are only so many pages left, and it could be argued Prometheus is more potentially cool than he has been in execution. But that's a discussion for another time. As villains fall and some ground is gained, Scarlet Witch reappears thanks to her magic, finding the trapped Eternity and Kismet, avatars for the Marvel and DC universes respectively, still in an embrace. Seriously, now is not the time for cosmic displays of affection. Wanda is trying to use chaos magic to keep more heroes on the field than villains, but time is running out as Krona bellows his manifesto of revenge. His citadel crumbles as the undersea barbarian Atuma and his forces threaten to overwhelm some heroes, until Aquaman shuts them down with his unique telepathy. It was a bit taxing, but at least now they only have giant cavemen to deal with. Yes, cavemen. They haven't been featured much on those Geico commercials lately, and are still sore about that sitcom not taking off like they'd hoped, so they're plenty angry. Wonder Woman takes out the giants and tells everyone to head inside while she faces, I'm gonna say, Surtur, with the aid of She-Hulk. Meanwhile, further in the fortress, Radioactive Man and Solar act on the advice of a bald guy who knew his stuff and attacked Superman with kryptonite and red sun energy simultaneously. A heavily damaged Vision uses the last of his solar reserves, infusing it into Supes with red eye beams, giving Cal enough of a charge to take the foes down. Which I find weird for a couple of reasons. One, if solar energy of the red variety reduces Clark to a powerless state, it would be possible that the kryptonite has no effect on him. At least that has been the case in other stories, other iterations. And why are Vision's beams red when Cal needs yellow sunlight? Is this where the story really falls apart? Going so strong up to now and then becoming unintelligible trash? I knew it! This is why I can't have nice things! I'm out of here! At least I would be if I had anywhere else to go. You're lucky I have no life. With those villains disposed of, Superman stands at the last barrier protecting Krona, but unable to get past it, until an overwhelmed Thor lends him Mjolnir. And he deals the energized wall a strike most mighty! Then gets tossed back by something on the other side, specifically an armored and well-prepared Krona, powered by the artifacts in his containment orb. He mocks them for their futile efforts, as villains do, and prepares to watch the universes make out to death, until he notices a red blur at his feet and a purple arrow crashing into the vessel from which he draws his power. Turns out Barry managed to narrowly get himself and Clint to safety from Dreamslayer's attack. Somehow. And under Cap's orders, they waited for the right moment to strike, with the TNT arrow. And I guess Barry had a spare ring on him since his costume was left behind, or he put it back on while everyone was too distracted by the battle. I'd rather not think of alternative contexts for him being called the Flash, so the artifacts, Krona, and the universes are caught up in a kind of energy whirlwind, culminating in a blinding flash of light, and Hawkeye fades away. Looks like that's put an egg beater in his gym shorts. Egg beater in his gym shorts? Note to self. New revenge torture method. Wally West is back as Flash, and as everyone's bodies are back to what they were, the only ones who remain, according to Rayner, are the ones that were around when this all started. Though they may have lost some people, reality is reordering itself, so the ordeal is at least complete. Until the Dark Knight Killjoy points out some more commotion in the direction of the two Earths they've been fighting to save. Again, two hands appear, but this time they're green and pushing them apart. It's the Spectre, Hal Jordan, returning to help out even in his present state. As Superman mourns Vision, who can get fixed up, robot, it's time to hightail it, since the realities are rebuilding themselves, and that includes the restoration of Galactus. Ever the neighborly farm boy, Clark grabs Mjolnir to hand it back to its owner, but can't lift it. Thor mentions the enchantment on it, where only a few worthies could wield it in desperate hours. What? I know the whole worthy thing has applied to only a few people, but you're telling me Superman doesn't qualify as worthy? We're not talking DC movie Superman or one affected by red kryptonite, but really? Not Superman? Was there some addendum put on the hammer just before this story that I don't know about? As the heroes return to their worlds, trading respect and salutes, the universe's destructive relationship comes to an end, and they promise they'll totally stay in touch, but really don't. In an empty void, the Grand Master is revealed to have been revived from the hero's victory, and it turns out the whole adventure was part of a game he was playing with Metron, and in a first, it seems all sides have won. Gast the game, heroes the battle, and Krona may well find the answers he seeks, as the comic ends on a cosmic egg containing his essence, and whatever hatches from it will be closely monitored by Metron, and perhaps he and Grandmaster will do this again. Someday. And that was JLA Avengers. And it was an entertaining read through and through. I can't find anything particularly wrong with the art. It was consistently detailed and wonderful. It managed to blend a contemporary feel and classic vibes all at the same time, which is what you want if you're going to have characters swapping out like they did. And they were written well, their interactions great, and even smaller elements like Plastic Man's antics were always fun. Each chapter is more than 45 pages, and they use each and every one effectively. Nothing feels like filler, even the 2-page spreads, which sometimes read like one long single page. In terms of art and story, everything felt like this is what it needed to be for this story. And I can't say that about a lot of stories, even ones I like. There are details I didn't really get into, not simply because of episode runtime, but it's something you have to experience for yourself. From the quiet, personal moments that humanize these characters to the big fight at the end where you're looking for each iteration, each costume, each member of the legacy as they switch in and out as an homage to where they came from and where they are. It's probably one of the most solid stories I've reviewed thus far, but it did have a few head-scratchers, mostly in issue 4, but in other areas. Not just stuff like Superman saying he's apologizing again when we never read him apologizing the first time, like how Diana's lasso could get the truth, but not the whole truth. It would kind of make sense if the Grand Master's super powerful, but it made a little less sense with Sonar. Or even if you couldn't forgive Superman needing Cap's shield, there was the deal with Mjolnir and his fight against Solar and Radiation Man. Some of that just seemed off to me. It's possible they didn't want to make him too powerful on his own so he could require aid from his Marvel peers, which, given the scale they're going up against, is kind of understandable. In a lot of ways, it's much like the DC vs. Marvel crossover from several years before, even though they don't seem to acknowledge it or regard it as canon. Characters swap universes, the universes merge for a brief time, but no Crystal Bros or Access, for better or worse. And that little hint at the end of Metron saying maybe they'll do this again, I wouldn't count on it. I think this was the last crossover by DC and Marvel, and that may be because, if certain rumors are true, and keep in mind I'm saying they're rumors, that the two companies aren't exactly seeing eye to eye. Just as well because I shudder to think of what would be wrought by certain creators at a certain publisher. In short, this is a highly recommended story, and you should check it out for yourself, especially if you have an affinity for both of the big two. So that does it for this season of Taking Issue, and the end of Year of the Crossover. Thanks for watching, and if you can't wait until January for more episodes, you can refresh yourself with episodes you haven't seen yet. Or watch Glove and Boots in the meantime. I know I will. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.